Well, most of our playoff bracket is set. The sole exception is the Rams are locked into the 4th seed, and we don't know who they're playing because the Lions Vikings game hasn't been played yet. But at this point, I'm going to run down these matchups and tell you who I think is going to win it. And there's two reasons why I'm making it now. I'm busy next week and I won't be up when the Lions Vikings game's over because that could be anywhere from 11 o'clock to potentially midnight. Second of all, and more importantly, I think the Rams are losing either way. Yes, I know that the Rams did actually hand a defeat to the Vikings earlier on in the year as they beat them 30-20, and I am aware it would be in Los Angeles. That being said, the Vikings have been a lot better. Back then, we didn't know who the Vikings were, if they were going to make the postseason, if they were just off to a 5-0 start. And they're going to be legit. And the Lions, yes, they have a banged-up defense, but they still win games even with their banged-up defense. So, with that out of the way, I am going to predict the matchups. So I could do a bracket a la Wikipedia style. I'll worry about the 1 seeds later. And I am using abbreviations as I make this map. And, I think that there's going to be a few teams that I think could be in some trouble in the playoffs, but ultimately, it's an achievement to even make it to the playoffs, especially given the records you needed this year, because every team in the playoffs has at least 10 wins. There's a 10-win team out of the playoffs. This is one of the toughest brackets. For crying out loud, the Packers, who are a 7th seed, won 11 games. So all these playoff teams, they worked hard in order to even make it to this point. And so there's nothing to be ashamed of out of any playoff team. Yes, there are some that should be disappointed if they lose in the first round, but then there's quite a few teams that are in this bracket that I think, it was an accomplishment to even make it to the playoffs given the situation that they were in. Like, for example, the Washington Commanders were a team that didn't exactly have the best expectations with a rookie quarterback, and they're in the playoffs. The Denver Broncos, rookie quarterback. People didn't really think that they would make the playoffs, and it was a long road to get there, but they made the playoffs. The Los Angeles Chargers, again, you're not really sure of the new playbook. You hope that they can make it there, but again, you're not really sure. So there's quite a few teams that have aspirations on a Super Bowl, and there's quite a few teams playing with house money. We're going to go in this bracket from top to bottom, but I did already note that I thought that the Rams were cooked either way, so I put a check mark next to the 5 seed. And then we'll draw in how it's going to go after that. But for Pittsburgh versus the Ravens, I don't really know what needs to be said anymore because I really thought that the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to win the division. And then they proceeded to lose their last 4 games. Granted, most of them were against good teams, but they lost to the Bengals, who aren't even making the playoffs. And the Ravens, while the Steelers have lost their last 4, the Ravens have won their last 4, and they walloped them 34-17 in their head-to-head matchup. Granted, it was one of those games that was close for, a while. Tied in the third quarter, a one-score game heading into the fourth quarter. But, the Steelers just could not get it done. They're coming in with no momentum. All the momentum is on the Ravens side, and the Steelers have just collapsed for a while. I've made videos I've since had to delete due to a lack of views as to my thoughts on Mike Tomlin and why he should be fired. And I think that the Steelers are losing first round again. Broncos versus, this should not say Baltimore, this should say Buffalo. Please forgive me on my graph. The Broncos versus the Bills. And I think that the Bills are going to win this game. The Broncos, it was a struggle to even get to the playoffs, and I really hate to be the one to say this, but I don't think they deserved it. They won 38-0, but they played the Chiefs backups. They played Carson Wentz as quarterback, and they had an opportunity against the Chargers and against the Broncos to clinch it, and I really don't think that they deserved it. Granted, this does mean I am endorsing the Bengals to have made the playoffs. Personally, of the teams, I would have rather have seen the Dolphins made the playoffs, but they lost 32-20 to the Jets, so this game didn't even matter. And for the Colts, they beat the Jaguars, but they were eliminated after a loss to the putrid Giants, and I would have rather have seen them over the Broncos or the Bengals. That being said, it is cool to see a team that hasn't made the playoffs in 9 years make the playoffs. I just don't think that they really deserved it because they went up against the Chiefs' backups. Nonetheless, the Bills have looked really good. Even though they rested their starters and lost to the Patriots, I still think that they looked really good. I still think they looked really good. They walloped the Jets. They've beaten quality opponents like the Lions and the Chiefs. They've also beaten, some of those middle tier teams. Like granted, they did take some tough losses, but I think that they should be fine round one. Yes, the Broncos have a good defense, but it's been collapsing a bit recently. And again, they needed to play all the Chiefs backups to even make it into the playoffs. Which, good for them because the Giants couldn't even beat the Eagles' backups, but the Patriots beat the Bills' backups. Beating backups isn't exactly the most impressive thing in the world. Chargers versus Texans. And I think that the Los Angeles Chargers are going to win this game as a wild card team. Many might disagree with my take on this, but hear me out. The Texans played all their starters to get momentum, and they beat the 3-14 Titans by 9 points. 9 points. And this is, with them playing CJ Stroud. Granted, they eventually wound up benching him, but they still played their stars at the beginning. And the Titans were able to come back and actually make it a game at the end of it. And the fact that the Titans were able to do that concerns me with this team, especially because you look at when they play opponents who aren't crap. They got dog walked by the Ravens. They lost to the Chiefs, beat the Dolphins, but that's not really impressive. And they barely beat the Jaguars. They lost to the Titans for crying out loud. Nobody's impressed at beating the Cowboys these days. They choked against the Lions. They lost to the Jets. They beat the Bills, but that was back in October. They've collapsed since then, and the Texans should be lucky that they're even in the playoffs and that the rest of the division is dog crap, because otherwise they would not be here right now. Nonetheless, I think that the Los Angeles Chargers, who are an up-and-coming team with Jim Harbaugh, will do it. I think they will make the postseason. Yes, they've taken some tough losses. They got dog-walked by the Buccaneers. They lost pretty badly to the Ravens because the game was not this close. But I think for round one, they should be fine. And if I'm the Chiefs, even though you swept them, you barely beat them both times, I might be a little worried about the Los Angeles Chargers heading into it. Because if this holds, then it would be Chargers, Chiefs in the divisional round, and I would be a little worried. In the NFC, Commanders against the Buccaneers. This is an interesting matchup, and you gotta really understand the notion that the Commanders have not exactly beaten quality competition, but they are a clutch team. And what I mean by that is again, their win against the Falcons, which isn't impressive, because the Falcons, who had a losing record, was in overtime. This touchdown pass to beat the Cowboys was with 3 seconds left. Touchdown to beat the Eagles, which is probably their only quality win all year, was with 6 seconds left. When they played the Bears, which again, not a quality win, but it was on a Hail Mary, and we've seen that with this team and how they can just yank out a win with a last second comeback. But they got dog walked by the Buccaneers week 1 of the season, and Baker Mayfield is is just, a quarterback that even though the Buccaneers aren't, the greatest of all teams, there's still a team that can, go toe to toe and even defeat some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. They beat the Lions. They dog walked the Eagles. They've had some tough losses in here, but it's not like the Buccaneers are a bad team. So I think that I'm gonna give this one to the Buccaneers, which I promise you I'm not doing it because of bias. As a matter of fact, as an Eagles fan, I'd much rather face a team like the Rams, which happened the Commanders win, than face a team like the Buccaneers, who have the Eagles number. But I just don't think that Jane Daniels has really done enough to prove to me that he can beat the best of the best, because his quality, his best, because his only win against a good opponent was against the Eagles, where everything had to go wrong for the Eagles and right for the Commanders to win by 3 points in Maryland. Packers versus Eagles, and obviously I'm an Eagles fan, but I also have reasons to objectively believe that the Packers can win. Granted, they played their backups throughout this game, but they lost to the Chicago Bears. They also, not exactly the most quality wins. They got swept by both the Vikings and by the Lions. They beat the Rams, but back then the Rams were 1-4, so it wasn't a quality win back then. They did beat the Texans back when the Texans were decent, so they do have that quality win under their belt. But again, not the most quality wins I'm seeing here, not the most impressive wins by the Green Bay Packers. I'm not exactly moved. They played head-to-head. The Eagles won 34-29, and this was back when the Eagles were a bit of a shaky team, and it was a dramatic game too. But, we saw them go pretty evenly in Brazil, and, the fact that they're playing now in Philadelphia, I think that the Eagles are going to win this game. And we already know my thoughts on everything else. So should this hold, my divisional round bracket, which I'll just do below, because of the confusion, you're going to have Baltimore against Buffalo, and you're going to have Kansas City against the Los Angeles Chargers. I think in the NFC, I think it's going to unfortunately be Eagles against the Buccaneers. I really don't want this to be the case. And I think it's going to be either the Lions or the Vikings against the Lions or the Vikings. I think it's going to be a Week 18 rematch. But this is my bracket. This is my finalized bracket. This is what I think is going to happen in the wild card round. And this is my picks for the divisional round right here.